What's up, everybody? Mark with Kardavox Academy here, and today is something special. We're going to be talking about the latest release from Obey the Kraken, the Omega of Creation, and this is fun for two reasons. Number one, the vocalist, Daniel, is a previous student of mine. We worked together for a little while. He was there doing vocals with me, mostly, or doing lessons with me, mostly to get comfortable with his voice, mostly to reduce pain and strain. He wanted to keep his sound, but do it more comfortably, and so we worked on that. And it was a lot of fun because I am a full-time harsh vocal coach. I teach people how to do stuff like, and safely and efficiently so they don't hurt themselves. And the second cool thing is that this song has a feature from me in it. I was honored. He reached out and he said, hey, we would love to have you on a track. And so I agreed because it's a cool song. I like it. So obviously I've heard this before. I tracked vocals to it. But if you're new to the channel, hang around for some cool vocal education. If you want to know about what I do with my voice, check out my band Kardashev. We have a single coming out soon. I guess I don't know if I'm supposed to say dates or not, but it's within a few days of the release of this video that you will see here through Metal Blade Records. And that's it. So let's do this. The Omega of Creation, Obey the Kraken, and me. Here we go. So that's the first place I'm going to pause it because, like I said, I've heard this before and I know what to expect. And I know the good places to pause. Again, this is a vocal education channel, so we do pause. We do talk about vocals. That's all I know, and I'm not going to change anytime soon. So one of the coolest things that I like about his voice, and one thing that I enjoyed in lessons, was his ability to change the degree of pitch within his screams. Most of what he does would fall under what we usually refer to as the fry category, right? So it's a high constriction scream that has a lot of very high end frequencies. It's not loose and open like your false chord vocal, which is more of my style, false chord or like a written little epiglottal sounds. What he has is a higher, brighter, more generated from like sort of a head voice space sound. And his ability to move in and out of pitch is really awesome. And I think he does well characterizing those sections. He can sound both sort of animalistic and also kind of barky. I think that in some sections of this song, he has like almost a reminiscent hardcore sound, right? Now, whenever I mention hardcore in a metal song or metal in a hardcore song, people get a little dicey. Because I don't know. But his delivery and his shoutiness really brings a lot of that aggression to the table. And I think that's really cool because one thing about this genre of deathcore, which is very like, and then big open breakdowns, is it can be challenging to bring character into the music. I find that the more technical the music is, the more you have to work to bring like emotion into it. And that's not a criticism of this genre. It's every genre has its challenges, and that's one of the challenges of this. So by adding little bits of voice, by adding little bits of characterization, it's very, very helpful. I think it keeps the vocals interesting. We're going to talk more about it as well, because it's not just about the introduction of pitch. It's also about the way that we deliver it, right? Remember that when we are doing metal vocals, we are partially actors, right? Maybe not in the literal sense, but we need to bring some of that technique, conveying messages, conveying emotion. We'll talk more about that later, but this is just kind of prepping you for what I want you to think about, right? As we're moving forward, right? As we listen to this song, think about the characterization of his voice. What emotion is he conveying? What are some of the things he's doing that differently to, move in and out of like just pitchless nasty monster and pitched angry human, if that makes any sense. Let's keep going because there's some good stuff. gratuitous. Gratuitous, right? But that's kind of the point. I remember when he reached out to me for lessons, I heard a little clip of his voice and he was like, hey, I want to get lessons from you. And I was like, why? I was like, what are we looking for here? But yeah, a lot of it was pain and strain on those vocals, because with these maybe not hyper, but with these highly constricted vocal styles, these like, you know, like these types of sounds, it really is, it's a lot easier to make the sound than it is to make it properly, right? So how are we going to create these sounds in such a way where, I lost my train of thought. Where we don't sacrifice the tone, but we do improve the sensation, right? Because one thing that people will run into is they'll have a vocal, right? Let's say they have like something a little bit more standard, like, you know, a good starting point, right? Oftentimes what they'll find is that because they are relaxing away from it, they're losing their tone, right? And that makes sense to a degree. If I relax away too much from this, hey, I sound like this, and that's not going to be very useful. And it can be difficult to know, am I relaxing out of this and losing my tone because I'm doing what the tone requires and moving away from it makes the tone go away? Or am I relaxing out of it and losing the tone because I have learned how to do this in an improper way that requires more pressure than I need? That's a tough question to answer. One thing you can do is to answer that question on your own is to ask yourself, do I feel strain and fatigue that lasts after I practice, right? This is a very acrobatic and very athletic activity, right? And so it makes sense if after practice you feel tired, you feel like, whew, I just did a workout. But if you're feeling strain and like you're swallowing and it's uncomfortable, and you know, you feel like you're having to work harder to talk, and you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh, still kind of tender. Even if it's not your vocal cords, if it's just the muscles, then the answer is you probably have learned how to do this learned how to create a cool tone in an improper way. And as a result, you have to learn how to redo it. You kind of have to build back into that sound from the ground up. And that's where a vocal coach can be helpful. Or, you know, if you're very good at self-teaching and self-learning, which if you found yourself in this position, maybe that's not you. But if it is, you know, what you can do is you can start slow. You can start low. So for example, my low that I do is basically like, if I was trying to deconstruct that, I would focus on doing it as quiet and as low pressure as I can. And it's going to sound different. So, and I would focus on getting that comfortable, getting that distortion in the front of my face. Once I have that, I would lean in only as much as is required to get to the tone that I want, right? To get to the tone that I want. A good example of this is you don't run into this as much anymore, but it used to be somewhat common for there to be video games that you had different results based on how hard you pushed the button, right? Push the button a little bit and it's a light attack. Push the button harder and it's a strong attack. Push the button really hard and it's like a mega attack or something, right? Learning how to slowly push that button until you get the result that you want. It's a similar concept in theory, right? And so when we slowly lean in, I have a great tone with a lot less pressure than I think I would need, right? Now, the other thing I want to talk about is his delivery, because I told you I was going to talk about that, right? If you listen, and he's going to do it again in this song, if I remember correctly, if you listen to his delivery, he's doing what I call like monster toddler voice or angry toddler voice. This isn't a slight against his vocals. This is a way of delivering your voice, right? What you do with your clean voice is you gotta talk like this. I don't want to do that, Ma. I don't want to take a bath. I don't want to go to bed. My son usually says it a lot more high-pitched and shrill. His 2.5-year-old self is very opinionated. But, you know, we've got this big, I'm a big scary monster. I'm a big scary monster. Now, if we do that voice, there are some things we can pay attention to, right? First and foremost, I'm creating that voice, but it's not a lot of work on my neck. I'm not taking my larynx and shoving it down as far as I can. I'm a big scary monster. It doesn't sound like that. That's too much effort. You're allowed to use your larynx to adjust the tone of your voice, but you don't want to, like, you know, drive the entire ship with it, right? Mostly this is in the front of my mouth. Woo, 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 woo. Ooh. If I make that sound and hum, Ooh, right? I've got a nice amount of buzz on the front of my face. Ooh, yum, 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 yum. I can chew on that sound. Yo, 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 yo. I'm a big scary monster. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And if I have that sort of like, Fred Durst or like Zach De La Rocha delivery to my voice, it creates like this. And you get this pretty cool delivery that he is using to good ends. Anyways, let's keep going. Ugh. This next part's gonna be uncomfortable. Here we go. I'm going to pause it right there because I don't want to. I just need a break from looking at myself. So I'm going to tell you the vocal stuff I did because I know exactly what I did. So I can with these reaction videos, there are moments where I'm doing my best guess, right, when it comes to what a vocal does. And this is just part of the game because sometimes there are especially in deathcore, good Lord, there's so many vocal layers and there's so much reverb and there's so much, which listen, if you've heard my band Kardavox, I am not going to criticize anybody for using reverb, okay? That would be hypocritical. If you know, you know. But it can make vocal analysis difficult. But I'm taking a break because, so also if you know Kardavox, Kardavox is not like a tough metal band. We're not like boom, 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 boom. We're like sad, out in the woods, being like, why did my house burn down? Or like, I miss my wife, or like, I'm a space alien and I don't know what home is, So like, I'm like, when they had me do this section, they were like, we want you to do like tough metal stuff. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. Because I've always been on stage. Like I'm the kind of person that when we used to play more regularly, I would jump off the stage and like give hugs to everybody. I was like, during a big breakdown, I'd be like, this is so awesome, He's a lot better at, like, he looks natural being tough and being intimidating. And me, I just look like, I don't know, my like dad, my wish.com Zach Galifianakis self looks like I'm at like my son's little league game and I'm taking it way too seriously. But I want to talk to you about the two vocals that I did here because this is vocal analysis and you may be curious. So essentially here, I'm really only doing two vocals. And there are a couple reasons for that. First and foremost, if you are familiar with Kardavox, we're not a deathcore band. And the vocals I do, although I have the ability to be highly acrobatic, it's not as nearly as acrobatic. And so I wanted to kind of play to my strengths. That's a really important part of songwriting. And especially if you're doing a guest feature, generally it's good to stick with where you're comfortable, right? The second is that I thought it was a good contrast because he's way more acrobatic than I am. And so I thought it would be a fun contrast. Like he doesn't need, like, you get what I'm saying. So there are really only two vocal styles going on here. There is what is often called a false chord high, which is a term I don't love for it. And then there's like this arytenoidal epiglottal low. Those are really the only two styles that are going on here for me, right? There are some spots where his voice comes in behind mine and it sounds sick. I love his choice of timbre. Like if I'm really low, he is a little bit brighter. If I'm really high, he's a little bit more voicey and low. It really creates a thick wall. I love that. Really smart choices. But anyway, the high vocal, a large part of the reason why people will call this a false chord high is because it's very easy to get into from a false chord, right? So if I do a simple false chord, yay, blow, hey, 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 which is just a foundational tone that you can make sound really cool. You can make it sound really cool. And I make a shift to the shape of my vocal tract, okay? I make a shift to the shape of my vocal tract. Hey, hey, sounds silly. When I make that shift of vocal tract shape, the distortion passes off or so it feels. It passes off to what's called my palatopharyngeal folds or palatine folds, which is if you look in the back of your mouth, you'll see your uvula dangling and you'll see two little folds kind of coming from the sides. Those folds, when I do this, they zip up together. The uvula shoots up, soft palate shoots up, and it actually closes off my nasal cavity. So it sounds more like, right? There's no air coming from my nose. And those folds come together and you can actually see them with my students when I'm using my web camera. I don't use my web camera for these videos because this thing looks like shit. My students, I'll hold the webcam up to my face and they can see it. And it creates this. Now, this has led some people to say, oh, that's a fry scream. Okay. It doesn't feel like a fry scream to me. I think it's something different. We're actually going to find out soon when I go get scoped and poked and prodded with the charismatic voice, but up in Utah. But it's simply a shift. And one of the best ways to do this is to go slow and stay relaxed. Big surprise, right? Another exercise that works well with a lot of my students is to get this voice. Hey, everybody, welcome to the circus of values. And then from there, we do little staccato coughs. And you'll feel vibration right in the back of your mouth. And that creates a tone that is controllable and achievable, right? It is kind of difficult to get, but part of the reason that I do it is because once you have it, it's easy. And I cannot be bothered with difficult things. I'm lazy. My whole approach to vocals is I found what was easiest for me and I did that. Because like if Kardashev's not going to use it, I can't be bothered. The lows, again, I'll keep it brief because I want to focus mostly on these guys. But the lows, essentially what I do is I take like a Louis Armstrong, Kermit the Frog, World War, bad timing. Warcraft 3 voice, you know.
Hey, zog zog, I use that. I make sure the vibration feels up in my face. I remove my vocal cords and I press it.
And it's a high pressure vocalization, but it's not very taxing to do. It's very, very easy, especially when you sort of sigh into it. And it's a great low to use because it's super big and super wet and super sludgy, with not a lot of work. You know what I mean? But anyways, let's keep going. The next part, I do some clean vocals. We'll talk about that, but let's keep going here. I'm just appreciative. Thanks again, guys, to the homies over in Obey the Kraken for letting me do a guest spot. And for giving me such a cool spot. Like they really gave me like one of the coolest spots on the song, and I was like, wow, thank you guys. Let's keep going. Another quick little pause here. I want to talk about that section. So one thing that you will often hear from fans, people or non-fans of deathcore is that it's all very samey, that it's extremely formulaic. And I want to use this as an example to say where I disagree, right? There is a lot of, every genre has its bands that are highly derivative. And to a degree, if you're making art, it's derivative. There's, you know, I know that's like a really snobby word, but it's kind of a good one, right? But I want to talk about this section. So when I did the guest spot, I thought, hey, I do a lot of clean singing in Kardashev. I'll do some more. I'll get, and so I did. It's very far in the back, you know, and it's just a simple belt, right? It's just like a hey, as cool as presence grows. It's just a simple belt, right? Which even though I do a lot of singing, clean singing in Kardashev, I leave 99% of the clean vocal lessons to our clean coach Verona, who does excellent videos and excellent lessons. But then hearing the final version, it's super cool what we have here, right? So he had some lower singing. He's singing more in his chest, and I don't have the melody memorized, but I'm up there in this, you know, powerful higher belt. And then he's like, okay, well, let me do something in my chest. And then boom, let me put in some like really roaring, really wide mids. And it creates this really huge soundscape. And so, you know, and it's mixed really well. So I think that's a smart stack. When I threw that out there, I was like, hey guys, I threw some singing in. I don't know if you want to use it. It's really up to you. Let me know. I can do some screams, but I love how they, you know, took what I did and actually made it sound good and work with the song. On its own, I was like, I'm not so sure this singing works, guys, but I appreciate the opportunity. And he picked the best vocal, right? Because when you're thinking about, now again, I'm not like I'm a vocalist and a vocal coach, right? I yell at stuff and I teach other people how to yell at stuff. So when it comes to like the deeper parts of like music composition and recording and tracking, that's where I have to lean away because it's not entirely my expertise. But when we are building like a stack of vocals, we want to hit, you know, we want to spread our presence across the sonic real estate, right? High end, mid, low, you know, you're going to have a big space, right? And so we have that. We have my high belting, and then he put in, I don't know if it was already there, I don't remember, or he put it in after, maybe it was already there. But they kept it, right? This beautiful, really good chest voice singing, and then a scream. So we've got like a full structure there. And it really works. And the scream, had he done like a super guttural, it may have gotten lost. If he had done a high, it would have clashed with some of the same sounds that were going on in the singing voice. So just wanted to say, very smart composition. I like it. Let's keep going. Dirty. I was going to pause it right before that big breakdown, but I was like, I won't do it to him. I won't do that to him. One thing I really like, and part of the reason I was excited to do this song on the channel is because there's a lot of isolated vocal here. Well, maybe not isolated, but there's a lot of vocal that's not accompanied by much, right? And I remember, you know, working with him on his voice and these high, like, you know, yeah, like these sounds that he's way better at. You know, I remember like this chewy, bright sound, like leading into this high, crackly fry space. And it's really cool to hear that open, relaxed, and controlled, but still nasty and acidic, right? And these big, open, rounded lows. Now, there's one tone I wanted to talk to you about. There's a lot of discourse around cupping the mic here in the metal vocal world. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's one of those things that as a vocal coach, maybe I should have an opinion about, but I just don't have the bandwidth. If you cup your mic, your sound guy may have beef with you. Your engineer may have beef with you. I just don't. I don't cup the mic. You can if you want to. Here, I'm not saying he's cupping the mic, but I'm saying we have a sort of cupped mic sound. He may not be cupping the mic. And that can kind of come from a couple things, right? Obviously, we can do things in post. We can do production things to make things sound more muffled, to make things sound more like crackly. A lot of times when we cup the mic, I'm not going to do it here, don't worry. You get a lot of clipping. You get a lot of just mess, right? Which sometimes the thing is that sounds cool, right? But there are things we can do to make our scream sound muffled so that the signal into the mic has kind of that muffly sound without actually having to, cup. Like you can hear, it makes a huge difference, especially with this microphone, right? So one of the ways we can do that, and this is part of the fun of harsh vocals, is we can sort of break rules to a degree, right? So normally, like a low, we would want it kind of open, kind of like this, whoa, whoa, whoa. But what if, just for fun, I keep the pharyngeal space, the oropharynx, the back of the mouth, I keep that open, ha, ha, but in the front, I get really slurry and sludgy. Now, as I close here, I'm going to get some peripheral closing here, right? But I can still work to keep it open, right? So instead of going, rah, 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 I'm going to go, rah, 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 rah. That seems like, if from a clean singer perspective, that's so counterintuitive. Why would you occlude? Why would you partially block off the channel that you need your voice to go through? Because it sounds cool. That's why. And that's one of the coolest things about metal vocals, is that you have two rules. Well, I have two rules for you. One, you have to sound cool to yourself and to your audience, right? A lot of people are like, I don't care what people think. I call bullcrap. You wouldn't release music if you didn't think people, if you didn't think people cared. Now, I do think it's possible not to care what other people think, but you wouldn't be releasing it. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm wrong. Actually, that take is too black and white. I'm going to roll that back a little bit. I think most of the time, if you're releasing music, you care what people think. And if you want to be marketable, you kind of have to care what people think a little bit. Second thing is you have to be, not injuring yourself, right? So let's hear the difference. Let's hear the difference between raw, 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 and raw, 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 right? So we have raw, 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 now that does change the sound of the scream pretty significantly, but it creates a very muted, muffled sound that you can put into a mic, and it sounds fun. It sounds neat, right? We can also do things like tongue forward to muffle. Like when I did that, I had my tongue pulled back. I can also put my tongue down. There it is. Right? So there are a lot of cool options you can do. The only thing I'll say is, if you're doing this, you want to think about, again, carrying all that chewy energy up in the front of the face. You can hear a difference. You won't be able to feel it, but this is with the majority of the muscle activation being in the mouth. You can hear me clenching, right? And while it is true that we do want to constrict for certain vocals, like you would know, like if I was to sit here and tell you I'm not constricting when I do this, you would call bullshit, and you'd be right too. But what we don't want to do is really heavily constrict on, or what feels like below the vocal cords. If you feel like you're constricting below the vocal cords, right? Interestingly, there's not really a lot underneath the vocal cords that we do much with, right? Most of what we use is the vocal cords and up, right? But if you feel like you're clenching down here, like between your suprasternal notch and your larynx, whoa, stop it now. I don't know why I'm like pretending to karate chop people. I won't karate chop you in my lessons, I promise. I can't. Anyway, doesn't matter. So I forgot what else I was gonna say. So let's finish the song out. I think it's just like a cool ambient outro, but whatever. Oh, that's a great song. Get out of my face, you stupid emu. Ugh. Oh, just download ad blocker. Shut up. Anyway, that last song by Black Shape, Very good song. I need to reach out to him, by the way. Anyway, so that I'm not gonna lie, that outro was a little hard on my old man ears. I was like, why so loud? But anyways, excellent track by the guys in Obey the Kraken. Super fun being a part of it. I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully this video serves you well. Hopefully you watched it and got some education from it and you enjoyed it. But if you like what you see, if you are interested in learning more about harsh vocalization, continue watching the channel. Hit me up, KardaVoxAcademy.com. I'm happy to give you lessons or give you tips or whatever you need. And that's about it. Many thanks. Much love. I'm out.